Hi YouTube, today we're going to do a little bit of upgrading. Okay, so first of all, here we have the LaCie D2 Thunderbolt 2 drive, which I bought a few years back. This came with a 3TB hard drive. Just a quick recap on the back. We do have two Thunderbolt 2 ports. We have a Kensington lock, obviously for the power supply there. And also we have USB 3 connectivity. This plate was removable and upgradable with a 128GB SSD, which removed the functionality for the USB 3. Unfortunately, these are no longer available, and if anybody out there does have one of these, I would be greatly interested in getting the SSD upgrade. So yeah, leave a comment if you do have one which you wish to part with, because I definitely would like one. But apart from that, it's a really good hard drive. This was originally my working drive for Final Cut Pro, but now I also have the 5TB Western Digital drive. There's also a video of that, so the original video links for this and the Western Digital, I'll put them in the description below. So yeah, that's my working drive now, which is 5TB. Obviously 3TB is not enough to back up 5TB, so here we have, for the moment, an 8TB Western Digital Red drive. This is obviously SATA 3, runs at 6GB/s through the interface, and this does come with 250MB of cache. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 3TB drive out of the LaCie enclosure, pop this in, and then we'll just do a little bit of a speed test and make sure everything's working, and then this will be my time capsule backup for the iMac and the attached 5TB drive that I use for Final Cut Pro. So without further ado, let's take the LaCie enclosure apart and take the old drive out. So on the back there are 3 screws. This screwdriver might be a little bit too big. Oh no, it's good. So let's just take the screws out the back. One tip that I always recommend to anybody that's building a computer, some people may argue the fact, but I always use a magnetic screwdriver because it's great for keeping track of the screws, because it's a nightmare when you drop one, especially when they're black screws and you've got a dark brown carpet like mine. They just seem to disappear into the ether. Right, so 3 screws and the back panel has literally just fell out, so that's good. Okay, so next, I presume this should slide out. I'm not 100% sure. Okay, so once the plate is off the back, the whole thing slides out from the front, like so. And then in this is a Seagate 3TB or 3000GB. So next I'm just going to try and disassemble the rest of this, swap the hard drive over, put everything back together and take it from there. Okay, so there's 2 screws either side of the control interface, which has the Thunderbolt 2 and the USB 3 headers on. As I mentioned earlier, magnetic screwdriver is the best thing ever, because when you've got one that isn't and you can't get stuff out of little gaps, it makes all the difference. As you may be able to see, there's some little screws that go into the drive, and then they're suspended in these little rubber grommets, which obviously are part of the anti-vibration. It's a little bit of a pig to get them out, but I am getting there. slowly. Right, so next to just try and take the drive out gently without damaging any of the enclosure. There we go. Right, so now that's out, all I need to do is swap over the hard drive, obviously with the rubber bungs and the screws that are in there. So rubber bungs off, and let's take these little screws out. They're in there quite tight, to be fair. One, crikey. They really did make sure these weren't coming out. Now hopefully, due to the date of manufacture of this hard drive, I'm not entirely sure, but I will check the label in a second. Oh, I can't actually move that one. 1 second, I think I might have to go and get an additional tool because I can't actually shift that last one. Okay, I did it with this. So the fourth one is now out. Okay, so that can now be archived. Let's just check the front to see if it does say how much cache is on there. It doesn't say. I've got an idea. Let's Google it. Right, so let's go off the model number. ST3000 DM001 specs. There we go. Okay, so according to this on Wikipedia, this only has a 64 megabyte buffer as opposed to the 256 one on the Western Digital one we're going to put in. So hopefully there may be some improvement. Right, now let's pop these back into the new drive. Just finger tighten them in first and then we'll tighten them up. I'm not going to plan to put them in as tight as they were in the original disc because that was ridiculous. It actually felt like they'd put some thread lock on there or something, but there isn't any on there, so I think they were heavily torqued in. Right, let's just give them a good tighten. Now this Western Digital drive that I'm putting in, it is mainly designed for network attached storage. That's not really a problem. This is going to be a backup drive, so using the Thunderbolt port, the LaCie only turns on once power is received from the host device. So it will only be on when the iMac is on. Right, let's just double check my orientation. Right, so these rubber bungs go on the back of the drive, like so. Now let's try and squeeze it back in. The other thing that I did before I started doing all this, this drive does have an icon of the actual drive itself, the actual physical enclosure. So what I did was I made sure that I kept a copy of that. So once this is formatted, if it doesn't automatically bring across the icon info for this drive, I do have it saved as an icon and a PNG, so I can just add it to the information file for this. Right, so that drive is now back in. I'll just get a little bit more of this or warranty void if broken sticker off the header. It's really weird, it's like peeling off like paint as opposed to an actual sticker. Just don't want to get any in the connector. Right, okay, so this can now go back in. It also has to slide into these grooves at the top. I'm being extra careful not to damage the circuit boards on this. And it's a little bit fiddly. Right, I do believe we're back together. Just make sure the ribbon cable is stuck back down. There is a little bit of adhesive on the back. Right, there we go. So now just to pop these two screws back into place, which may be easier said than done. I really need to get some smaller magnetic screwdrivers, I think. Alright, so that's one for the moment. Just loosely popped into place. I'll tighten them up once I've got this second one in. So I'll just use the magnetic screwdriver just to lower that back into place, which is easier said than done. There we go. Right, so let's tighten them up properly now. Okay, so now we slide back into the drive enclosure. Make sure we get it the right way up. It is a very, very snug fit. I mean, the rubber grommets are also fouling ever so slightly on the enclosure as they go in. Okay, so that is now in. So lastly, we just need to pop this panel back on. As I mentioned earlier, this panel can be replaced with one that is Thunderbolt only, with the SSD on. So it's this circuit board that comes out, I believe, and it just gets replaced with the one with the SSD on. Yeah, so if anybody does have one of those SSD upgrade kits for this, I would highly be interested if you could help me out. All it does is adds an internal SSD to work alongside the drive. It can be accessed as a separate drive over Thunderbolt, or you can set it up to be a form of cache for the main drive. So it's essentially like the older Fusion drives that Apple used to supply. I'm having a fight with a screw because that one doesn't want to go in. Why don't you want to go in? Right then, that's all back together. The 8TB drive is now in the enclosure instead of the 3TB drive. So all I need to do now is connect up the power, the Thunderbolt cable, and just double check everything's working. Okie dokie. Right, let's plug in the power and the Thunderbolt cable and see what happens. Firstly, I will plug in the Thunderbolt cable, and then secondly I will plug in the power, and it's flashing away already, which is a good sign. Right, so it's asking me, do I want to use the Western Digital Red 8TB to back up with Time Machine? Not just yet. This was originally in another external enclosure, which I've decided not to use, as it was only USB. So I'm just going to click don't use. Okay, so first of all, for this drive I'm just going to go to get info. I'll bring that over here so you can see it. Okay, so we'll open up preview, and here are the icons that I saved. So I believe I can just drag and drop it onto there, and there we go. That's how you change an icon. Okay folks, so that is how you upgrade the hard drive in a LaCie D2 Thunderbolt 2 enclosure. If you would like to purchase one of the hard drives that I used, I'll put a link in the description below where you can get one from Amazon if you wish to do so. Also in the description there will be links to the original video for this external hard drive and the other Western Digital one that I use. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe and share this video with everyone you know.